intervention at the MDB is to close financing gap. And at the Islamic Development Bank, we are proud to say that 9,000 billion of our financing since our inception was dedicated to water, sanitation, and urban. As of today, 4,000 billion US dollars are under implementation in that one. So meaning that we are working to scale innovative financing. Innovative financing, the President of the Republic said it this morning, we blend concessional resources with private capital. Blending concessional resources with private capital and ensuring that performance-based mechanisms are clearly set in the beginning will help mobilize investment toward the water sector. But not only financing, but the impact of the financing is important. At the Islamic Development Bank level, from Pakistan to Senegal, in terms of water resource mobilization, we ensure that as of today, 2.8 million of households have now improved sanitation. 24,000 households gain access to safe water supply system. So the impact in the financing is key. The second aspect here, in terms of advancing toward the SDG 6, will be to ensure that inclusiveness is part of the process, not only at MDB's level, but even at local partner level. We need to ensure that the ownership of the local partner are there. And for that one, the first intervention mentioned it, we need to train. Human capital development is key, and institutional need to ensure that water resources are well known and the ownership of the local partner is there. Another key intervention and another key aspect of the Islamic Development Bank is the innovative approach, ensuring that technology is embedded in our design toward water resource mobilization. We ensure that in our design and when we develop projects, the technology is provided for sustainability of the water. The last thing is toward the development of the project, we ensure that water is embedded for food, water is embedded when we work on energy, and water is embedded when we ensure that we need to strengthen the access to sustainable development and access to rural energy in all aspects. So in all our intervention, we champion water for food, we champion water for energy, and we champion water for sustainability. I think moving forward, we need at the MDB level to double our intervention in terms of synergy, in terms of blend financing. Concessional resources are limited. We need to ensure that innovative financing mechanism is put in place to drag private investors in the water sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sam. And I think the prominence of the MDBs is important and innovative financing, but I also really like that you put emphasis on water for food. No, we often think as a water sector on water for people, water supply and sanitation, which of course is very important, but we also, agriculture is the biggest water user and probably the biggest water polluter, so we really need to make those links. Let's see whether in the coming days we can concretize that. What does that mean? Can we really come to Abu Dhabi with a way of making that connection practical? Let's go to the next speaker, and then we do go back to water supply and sanitation. We have the Special Rapporteur on Human Rights to Safe Drinking Water and Sanitation with us, Mr. Pedro Arrojo Argudo. You've been doing this for some time. The question to you also, what's needed to accelerate the implementation of SDG 6? And what are the 2 or 3 key ways that this conference can really make sure that we don't only talk about this, but that we really put the human right to water supply and sanitation in practice for everybody around the world? Pedro, floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam. Well, Excellencies, dear colleagues and friends, first of all, thank you and congratulations to Senegal, Emirates, DESA, the organizers. Thank you for this event, it's very important. And since we are in Senegal, in Africa, that speaks French in addition to its native languages, right? Allow me to express myself in French.
Oui,
so
s'il vous plaît.
Be prepared with the translation for the ones who cannot speak French. Bon, tout d'abord, chers amis du Sénégal, merci vraiment pour nous accueillir et félicitations pour cet héroïque championnat d'Afrique. Et puis mes meilleurs vœux, vraiment, c'est très important ça. Nous sommes en Afrique. Mes meilleurs vœux pour cette année de l'eau en Afrique qui va finir à Emirates. Alors, je suis sûr qu'à 2026, la conférence va avoir un protagonisme important de l'Afrique. Je suis sûr. Nous avons entendu de sages paroles ce matin, mais Excellence, je vous exhorte à porter une attention très particulière aux paroles prononcées par la femme représentant les peuples autochtones. Des paroles sages, non seulement envers les droits des peuples autochtones, mais pour le bien du monde entier. En 2023, à la veille de la conférence sur l'eau de New York, les principales organisations des peuples autochtones, des réseaux de mouvements sociaux et d'ONG, des syndicats, réseaux communautaires et municipaux ont signé le manifeste pour la justice de l'eau. Par ce manifeste, plus de 500 organisations de tous les continents ont interpellé les Nations Unies portant un message très fort, exprimant les revendications légitimes de plus de 2 milliards de personnes vivant sans accès garanti à l'eau potable. Des milliards de right holders, pas simplement de stakeholders, de right holders, de titulaires de droits qui sont criminalisés, persécutés quand ils demandent leurs droits, souvent sous la direction de femmes, qui sont d'ailleurs les plus intéressés et engagés dans la défense de ces droits. J'estime que malheureusement, on a accordé peu d'attention à ces voix et à ce manifeste historique à New York. Et c'est pourquoi, aujourd'hui, en ma qualité de rapporteur spécial des Nations Unies, je dois appeler les États membres et les institutions du système des Nations Unies à prendre en compte le contenu de ce manifeste ainsi que les attentes sociales que je vais vous présenter. La conférence de 2023 a mis fin à une longue période de près d'un demi-siècle durant laquelle le secteur privé intéressé à la privatisation, je ne pose pas de questions sur la légitimité, intéressé à la privatisation des services d'eau et d'assainissement, a occupé, proprement dit, l'espace des Nations Unies, pilotant des initiatives telles que le Forum mondial de l'eau. Écoutez, imaginons pour un moment, pour un instant, si l'OMS n'existait pas. Et si, pour débattre de santé publique et de pandémies comme le Covid-19, c'était le lobby pharmaceutique qui organisait les discussions internationales. Telle a été la situation pendant des décennies en matière de gestion de l'eau. Aujourd'hui, sur la base de ce manifeste que je vous ai nommé pour la justice de l'eau, je travaille pour construire une plateforme sociale de l'eau. On l'appelle comme ça. La plateforme sociale de l'eau qui regroupe les principaux mouvements sociaux et d'ONG, les organisations des peuples autochtones, les syndicats, les opérateurs publics et des réseaux municipaux et communautaires. Et à nouveau, cette plateforme sociale de l'eau frappe, toc, 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 aux portes des Nations Unies. Excellence, je vous exhorte à prêter attention à cette plateforme sociale, au manifeste pour la justice de l'eau et aux revendications que j'ai l'honneur et la possibilité de vous présenter maintenant. La société civile globale est prête pour pousser avec vous et avancer envers la ODD 6 et renforcer le multilatéralisme que certains essayent de détruire. Conformément au double mandat reçu du Conseil des droits de l'homme et en tenant compte des demandes sociales que j'écoute de la plateforme sociale de l'eau, je vous présente 5 propositions. Première, promouvoir l'institutionnalisation de la conférence des Nations Unies sur l'eau avec des réunions régulières sous l'égide de l'ONU. Deuxièmement, créer un Conseil des Nations Unies pour la participation, la communication et la collaboration avec les mouvements sociaux et notamment avec les right holders, les titulaires de droits sur le modèle du mécanisme de la société civile et des peuples autochtones qui est en marche dans la FAO. C'est l'exemple composé dans ce cas-là de la Via Campesina et des peuples autochtones. Troisièmement, ouvrir la conférence sur l'eau à la participation effective des right holders, des peuples autochtones et des communautés vulnérables, souvent criminalisés et reprimés lorsqu'ils revendiquent leurs droits, en accordant une attention particulière aux femmes et aux jeunes de ces communautés, et en leur garantissant un espace d'expression dans tous les dialogues interactifs, afin d'assurer une approche transversale des droits humains à la conférence. D'autre part, étant donné que les right holders n'ont pas les moyens d'assister en personne à la conférence, ou ici, vous le savez, ils ne peuvent pas venir, il est indispensable de fournir les moyens techniques pour pouvoir suivre au moins les sessions et même participer à distance via Internet. Quatrièmement, promouvoir la mise en œuvre effective de la Déclaration des Nations Unies sur les droits des peuples autochtones, notamment en ce qui concerne leur écosystème aquatique, et protéger le modèle de gestion communautaire de l'eau actuellement en place chez les peuples autochtones et les communautés paysannes, pastorales et pêcheurs, en encourageant des stratégies de partenariat public communautaire telles que celles établies par la nouvelle loi adoptée en Colombie. Faites attention à cette loi. Et finalement, ouvrir un espace municipal et communautaire lors de la conférence sur l'eau dans lesquels les municipalités et les institutions communautaires, qui sont en fait responsables des services d'eau et d'assainissement dans la plupart des pays, pourront exprimer leurs problèmes, leurs besoins et leurs propositions. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Pedro, pour ces sages paroles. Thank you very much for these wise words, but also for very concrete actions. I think recommendations for how we conduct ourselves between now and December. How do we involve civil society, local governments and others so we have a real dialogue with the people that are responsible for water provision and the people that are affected by our actions. And I also picked up something beyond 2026 and 2028. How do we establish a social platform for water platform, Social de l'Eau, and also the idea of regular meetings within the UN beyond 2028. So again, concrete suggestions, please see how we can build coalitions around those so that we come with a concerted effort of a list of actions that really make progress. We're very happy that the AU Commissioner has joined us on the podium. His Excellency Mr. Moses Vilakati, the African Union Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment, all sectors where water are crucial, so we're very happy to have you here. We have the UN Water Conference in 2026, but on top of that, 2026 is the African Year for Water, so we look for the leadership of the African Union to really make sure how we can create water security here on the continent. Same question for you, what do you think are 2 or 3, or maybe one, big one, ideas for the UN Water Conference to really make sure that all the commitments and all the agreement we see in this room are translated in practical action?
Thank you very much, Director of Ceremonies. All protocols observed. Good afternoon. First of all, allow me to thank the government of the Republic of Senegal and its people for hosting such a high-level preparatory meeting here on African soil. And obviously we also acknowledge the United Arab Emirates as co-host for the 2026 UN conference and commend the United Nations for its strong leadership and continued commitment to elevating water and sanitation on the global development agenda. Africa comes to this conference with both urgency and determination. The urgency is because our continent carries the largest share of the global population without safe water and sanitation. And determination because we know that achieving SDG 6 is not only about dignity and health, it is about unlocking Africa's economic transformation and resilience in the face of climate change, which is why the African Union Commission and Assembly decided to make the theme of the year 2026 on water and sanitation. Now, in this regards, just allow me to share a few perspectives on the accelerating the implementation of SDG 6, how the 2026 UN Water Conference can change the arc of progress. I think this is a mammoth task, but I think it is doable. I think the first one is really related to financing. Through the Africa Water Investment Program, we are mobilizing $30 billion annually, which has got to be mobilized by 2030. We are saying here, water is essential. Water is life. We therefore call all partners to join us in closing the water investment gap by blending public and private finance and ensuring that every dollar delivers measurable impact for the communities most in need. We are aware that approximately 400 million Africans lack access to basic drinking water services, while between 700 and 800 million people are without safely managed sanitation and hygiene. What we did in South Africa, we had a water summit where we were trying to mobilize the financing, because we realized that we've got between 45 to 54 billion gap in the investment in water. It is not given the priority that it deserves. And I think I want to amplify that, and because of this shortfall, we need to urgently address the financial gaps. But what was pleasing was that during this summit, we were able to mobilize in the region of $12 billion. Of course, that's a commitment. I mean, those are pledges. Now we need the commitment, because you pledge, but at the end of the day, how much of that is coming to the kitty? It's one of those things that we now need to follow through, because they say all these partners were clear that we can easily and quickly harness about $12 billion for financing of the water. But you understand that the gap is about 45 billion. So we still need to get the other funding to ensure that water is accessible, water is available for our people in Africa. I think the second aspect is governance. Africa is elevating water and sanitation agenda to the highest political level. SDG 6 is not only a sector goal, it is the foundation for health, food security, climate resilience, economic growth, and peace. When heads of state and government take ownership, water becomes a national and global development priority, not just a social issue. So we're saying, let it be elevated in all of our countries, which is why we like the theme that has been taken by AUC to say every country must now commit to put water at the forefront of its budget agenda. And we're hoping that this is going to be realized, because if they are saying, yes, the theme is water, it means now from a governance perspective, they are putting priority on water. We have also, as an African Union, completed the preparation of the water vision and policy, which is a continental framework to guide inclusive, climate resilient water security and sustainable sanitation. We are strengthening the cooperation across shared water basins, and we urge global partners to support governance systems that are transparent, accountable, and equitable. This transboundary issue is very important, because water doesn't respect boundaries. So we need that commonality to make sure that we can share the water. It's no use to have water in one country and not being shared with another. The third one, Chair, or Director, is innovation. I think if we become more innovative, we can scale the digital water management, low-cost sanitation, technologies and climate smart infrastructure, because once we have that innovation, we can be able to ensure that everyone can access water. We're still again inviting collaboration with research institutions and the private sector to ensure that innovation reaches the rural villages as well as the urban centers. The fourth one is climate resilience. I'm saying water is the front line of climate change. So if we integrate water security into our national determined contributions, it will make an impact to what we do. We need to expand nature-based solutions, restoring wetlands, and protected watershed. I think finally it's about inclusivity. We need to make sure that our women, the youth, as well as the marginalized communities are at the center of water and sanitation as already been presented. Because if we leave one behind, then we're not going to succeed in what we're about. All in all, if we want to go faster, we always say go alone, but if we want to go far, we need to go together. So we need the partners, we need inclusivity, we need to make sure that the private as well as the public sector are united. Excellencies, the arc of progress on SDG 6 can bend towards success if we act decisively now. Africa stands ready to lead, to partner, and to deliver. Let us make this conference the turning point where commitment becomes action and where water security becomes a foundation for Africa's Agenda 2063 and the world's 2030 agenda. I thank you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on the African Union for their leadership on water. I heard you talk about transboundary water, and we have an interactive dialogue on that, interactive dialogue number 5 or E, I don't know how we count now, but which Finland and Zambia are leading together. Again here, there's much to build on. No? We have the Water Convention, we have the Global Environmental Fund. Here in Senegal, OMVS and OMVJ are best practice transboundary commissions. So how do we bring all of that together and come to concrete action in Abu Dhabi to take the next step on everything we've built? And I'm sure Africa will be in the middle of that. Let's take a step from Africa to the global level. I would like to invite Mr. Jason Morrison, the President and CEO of the Water Mandate, to give a few ideas from a private sector perspective. The Water Mandate is an initiative of the UN Global Compact and the Pacific Institute, which is a global initiative. Same question to you. We've already heard a lot about the private sector, but we haven't heard from the private sector. So what are you going to bring practically to the Abu Dhabi conference so that we really make progress?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to our UN Water Conference co-hosts, Senegal and UAE, for their leadership on advancing the global water agenda in 2026. The inventor Thomas Edison is attributed as saying, "Genius is 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration." The idea being that success is not just about the idea, it's about bringing the idea to fruition through hard work. I suggest that the water analog here is that achieving global water sustainability is about 1% commitment, 99% execution. I was asked to speak offering a business perspective, and I do so as the head of the Sea Water Mandate, a nearly 20-year initiative in partnership of the Global Compact and the Pacific Institute. We now have 600 member companies from a wide range of industry sectors and geographies that are committing to taking action on water in 6 areas and to report their progress annually. When it comes to UN convenings, there's often reference to the private sector, although I think for many, the perception is that we're speaking about the private sector as offering products and services for the water sector, or perhaps the private financial institutions that are underwriting water infrastructure. But it's important to note there's a wide range of businesses, large and small, from a wide range of industry sector that understand the importance of resilient water systems in the face of climate change. I come from meetings in Davos last week, and I can tell you that water is moving up on the agenda as an important issue, both politically and for the business community, because of the risks and debt dependencies that many companies are facing when it relates to water insecurity globally. I've been asked to offer 2 or 3 ideas for how the UN Water Conference in December can meaningfully, positively impact the arc of progress on water sustainability. And my inputs will orient largely around the 99% execution that I talked about at the outset, the ways of accelerating progress against our existing commitments and to scale what's proven to work already. The business community can play a unique role in this area because rapidly scaling success is something businesses do particularly well. This suggests that we should start by thinking about where we've come from with our last commitments under the Global Water Agenda. 3 years ago, we had over 800 commitments on water action, and it's not clear to many of us where we stand today with regard to execution against those commitments. And I do hope by the end of the year at this water conference in December, we will be able to evaluate what's worked, what has not, and why. Are we going to learn from our mistakes or repeat them? Furthermore, I hope we can have some real dialogue around what's needed to accelerate the scaling of what is in fact proven to work. And to be very provocative, if there is going to be a new round of commitments, I hope it's oriented around how our existing institutions can work together more effectively in mutually beneficial ways to accelerate the progress against our shared goals. At yesterday's stakeholder meeting, there was a lot of discussion around who are the voices that should be at the table at the UN Water Conference. And to offer my perspective on this question, I'll use an old adage that's used by civil engineers. And that goes that for a particular project, you have the issue of quality, price, or time. Pick 2, because you can't have all 3. And so I would offer a perspective that what we need to choose and prioritize here are speed and quality, or in our case, impact at scale. Will that cost more to achieve? Yes, but we've been underinvesting in water for a long time. And I hope that in December at our water conference, we can foreground what success looks like in practice at all levels, whether it be community-led initiatives that have improved water resilience for indigenous communities, or smallholder farmer-led initiatives that have improved yields while improving water quality and water use efficiency and economic livelihood. Or whether it's federal agencies that have worked to integrate policies across energy and food systems and water in ways that have led to positive outcomes and that also have added value to all stakeholders involved. Let's showcase those stories so that we can learn from them and inspire others to draft on those leading successes as examples. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jason, for again a few very practical ideas. Let me go to Sarine Malik. She's the Executive Secretary of the African Civil Society Network on Water and a very important voice from civil society in these global process and African process. So Sarine, you've discussed also with other civil society organizations, how can we get this process inclusive till the conference in Abu Dhabi, including the conference in Abu Dhabi, but also what are the practical actions to really change from commitment to actions to results?
Thank you, Meineke. All protocols observed, and thank you, merci au Sénégal pour nous accueillir. So, Meineke, you know, we had a wonderful meeting yesterday, co-convened by UN DESA, the German WASH Network, and the African Civil Society Network. And that was a demonstration of our agency. You see, civil society, when we asked, what are you bringing in December? So they'll answer noise. We'll bring noise. We'll bring, demands. We're going to ask for things. And we're often put on the spot. We're constantly asking, almost begging. What are you going to do that is different? And I think yesterday was really the movement that we saw in terms of moving from tacit to actual players and getting a seat at the table. Now, in terms of the messages that were conveyed from yesterday, about 3 of them that came out quite strongly, and the panelists have addressed quite a number of them, so I won't repeat it, but I second really all the recommendations that were made here. Number 1, voice. There is still an issue with voice, capturing all the voices. That is something that came out quite clearly. Voice of the women, voice of the youth, the voice of the indigenous people, voice of everybody you can think of, including the private sector. They also complained about not being adequately represented. So I think that is going to be really critical in terms of how do we, as civil society, as I mentioned, being the foot soldiers, being the agent between the different actors, and positioning ourselves as honest brokers, make sure that all this voice is actually brought to this conference. What it's going to look like in December, I think that is still up for discussion, but ideally, and what has been mentioned, in terms of ensuring that everybody was represented and the concerns were represented. And by doing so, and I mentioned this yesterday, creating demand for these people, for this voice. Number 2, the issues of governance, again, which were raised. And governance, one, I remember participants saying, it's usually very abstract. But if we were to narrow it down, it would come to 3 pillars: culture, systems, and oversight. I think those are extremely important in terms of what are we going to do in terms of strengthening those 3 particular areas. And the third point, of course, is resources, and this has been heavily mentioned. I know the next 6 years for the continent actually are going to be focused on the investment front, but resources, and this is what was mentioned, it's not just money, it's people, it's technology, it's innovation, it's a number of these things. But ultimately, Meineke, I think what could be done or what should be done, something that we would probably look at that will go within our mandates, and this is mentioned by my colleague here from the Development Bank, is that if we are to accelerate SDG 6, we're going to have to embed water in every other sector. I am convinced of that, whether energy, whether health, whether education, poverty alleviation, because the truth is this is not something that we can do on our own. And I think once we dig those trenches and let the water flow into these various sectors, we are going to see a critical mass and water actually being taken seriously. And the principles to govern, because again, we come back to the governance of things, creating demand, fairness, collaboration, co-action, partnerships, which will probably be really one of the key drivers. Thank you, Madam Minister.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much. I think what you say is extremely important, no? Embedding water in every other sector. I've heard it from everybody here. Challenge to all of you, to ourselves, because I don't know the answer to this question, so I'm outsourcing it to you. What are we practically going to do that? Because we've been saying this for a long time, but how are we going to do that? Yep. What are the practical actions to embed water in the agricultural sector, in the energy sector, in the health sector, in the city sector, all of these sectors? Let's come up with next steps and practical specific actions. I'm going to invite 3 youth representatives up to the stage, and they can share that podium. Let me just mention them. We have a representative from Senegal, from the UAE, and from the Global Youth Movement. So I'm inviting Handel Moux Rokel, Global Youth Movement for Water, UN Indigenous People Major Group for Sustainable Development, up to the stage. Also Rugyatu Ba, the president of the Association of Young Professionals of Water and Sanitation, here from Senegal, and Moussa Al-Shami, youth representative from the United Arab Emirates. So please come up and give us a message of hope of young people, and probably also not only a message of hope, but terms of reference what we old people need to deliver here in Abu Dhabi. Wait, le microphone ne fonctionne pas. Si on peut le... Et sinon, vous venez ici.
C'est bon.
Oui, c'est bon, ça fonctionne.
Oui,
allez-y.
Parfait. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, distingués invités, chers partenaires, chers jeunes, c'est un immense honneur pour moi de prendre la parole aujourd'hui au nom de la jeunesse sénégalaise, de la jeunesse africaine, mais de la jeunesse d'une manière générale. Bienvenue déjà au Sénégal, pays de la Teranga, terre d'hospitalité, de dialogue et de convergence des peuples. Dakar n'est pas seulement une ville haute. Elle est aujourd'hui un carrefour d'espoir, d'engagement et d'ambition pour l'avenir. Cette réunion préparatoire n'est donc pas une simple étape. Elle est un moment charnière, un moment où se construit la feuille de route de Dakar vers les Émirats, et surtout vers un avenir durable pour nos peuples. Mesdames et messieurs, distingués invités, chers partenaires, la jeunesse que je représente aujourd'hui n'est pas seulement spectatrice ni bénéficiaire passive. Elle est actrice, forte de propositions et de partenaires stratégiques. Lors de la conférence des Nations Unies sur l'eau de 2023, plus de 800 engagements ont été pris. Le défi aujourd'hui est clair pour nous: transformer ces engagements en actions concrètes dans nos territoires. L'héritage du 9e Forum mondial de l'eau, qui s'est tenu ici même à Dakar, et le mouvement global de la jeunesse pour l'eau, qui porte une stratégie mondiale, régionale et locale de la jeunesse pour l'eau, pensée pour durer bien au-delà de 2026, jusqu'en 2023 et même après 2030. Car, comme le dit le proverbe, une seule goutte ne fait pas la rivière. Nous appelons donc à la mise en œuvre officielle de cette stratégie, à la création de synergies fortes avec la stratégie jeunesse de la conférence, à un partenariat durable entre les gouvernements, les sociétés civiles, les femmes, les peuples autochtones, mais également la jeunesse. Il ne s'agit pas seulement d'être consulté. Il s'agit de co-créer et façonner ensemble l'agenda de l'eau et du développement durable. Mesdames et messieurs, chers partenaires, la jeunesse est prête à contribuer, prête à agir, prête à rendre compte également. Nous faisons de la conférence des Nations Unies de 2026 non pas un événement de plus, mais un tournant historique pour l'inclusion, l'action et la confiance entre les générations. Au Sénégal, pays de la Teranga, terre d'hospitalité, nous vous disons, la jeunesse est prête à marcher avec vous, pourvu que vous marchiez avec elle. Je vous remercie de votre aimable attention. Dalen ak jàmm. Merci.
Good afternoon, distinguished delegates. Greetings from the United Nations Indigenous Peoples Major Group for SDGs. For a long time, I had a question. The glass was half empty or half full. And that was because I've been witness of the increasing of conflicts for the access to water in our territories. I've seen people walking for a long distance to get water and even rivers getting dried up. Since I was a kid, I was told to take care about the rivers, but also what now is called solutions-based in nature. But for us, that was not in frame in institutionalized language. For us, it's our way to protect life. That experience has led me to the international events and spaces where I've seen the efforts that youth, indigenous people, women, and other right holders are doing to make sure that everyone has access to the human right to water, but also to protect the ecosystems. So, I have hope. I have hope because we have a lot of what we need to take action. We have science, ancestral knowledge, and we have commitments. But now it's time to turn all that into concrete actions in our territories. We as youth and indigenous peoples, we are here to not just to be consulted, but also to co-create the water agenda that we've been working on it. So please, we need all the efforts to all together fill up the glass. So thank you for having me here.
Assalamu alaikum. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor to speak here today as an Emirati youth, where we see young leadership in action and a shared commitment to partnership and progress. Growing up in the UAE, meaning growing up in the desert, we have achieved remarkable development, but we never forget that our success has always been shaped by scarcity, especially water. The UAE has no natural rivers or lakes, and our water resources has always been limited and precious. We were raised on the story of our founding father, Sheikh Zayed, whose vision and leadership helped expand water solutions and strengthen our communities. His legacy reminds us that water is not only a resource, it is the foundation for stability, dignity, and opportunity. The youth of today are inheriting a world full of such challenges, none of their own making. They have grown accustomed to being called upon to inspire hope in resolving political disputes and the climate crisis. But as we look towards the 2026 UN Water Conference, many youths will be hoping that they are not left to repair a broken global water system as well. For our generation, water is an issue where multilateralism simply cannot fail. They are delivering solutions. In the UAE, initiatives like the Mohammed bin Zayed Water Initiatives are helping drive innovation and ambition in water technology. As we prepare for 2026, I encourage all member states to bring youth into your planning and your delegation. We look forward to welcoming you in Abu Dhabi to build progress, and that begins here in Dakar. Thank you very much. Shukran.
Thank you very much for your inspiring statements, and just stay there for a couple of minutes while I'll close this end of the opening segment. From vision to commitment to action to result. I think, Handel, you got it right when you said we're not only here to consult, we're here to co-create. I think that applies to all of us. We're here to co-create action and results. So in the coming days, we sometimes have a tendency to preach to the converted. And we all say water is important, sanitation is important, groundwater is important, transboundary water management is all true. It's nice to say that briefly, but we need to spend most of our time to say, what does this mean to us? What can I do? What can my institution, my country do? And what can we do together to scale? And how can we use existing institutions and initiatives, not just add new announcements and work against the fragmentation we had? We heard President Faye this morning say, common action and fighting the fragmentation. I think we have a number of these actions that I'm very excited about that already came out of this opening segment. And let me name them in 3 categories. How do we join forces? How do we bolster multilateralism? And how do we connect what we do at the global level to the national and the local level? Because that's where the action is. Joining forces is about building coalitions between existing initiatives and making sure that with the scarce resources, and resources are getting scarcer, we do not overlap and we do really work together. No, we heard about how we can consolidate efforts around training and capacity building, building on the work of the UN Water Academy that you introduced, but I know there's many other people in this room that also work on those issues. So can we think, what's the consolidated, how do we join efforts to really get to action? I heard about transboundary water management from the EU Commissioner. It is an interactive dialogue. What can we do together? I think we're all convinced this is important, but what's the action we can take? And maybe one that I'm very excited about, I've heard about in the corridors, but I haven't heard in this session yet, is some kind of a movement around the reuse of wastewater. Very exciting, private sector, public sector, good for the environment, good for people, good for the economy. So that's joining forces. Not all of us, little flag with a new initiative, but really joining forces around these difficult and important themes. The second one is bolstering multilateralism. It's us. Alvaro Lario talked about the importance of member states to actually support the United Nations. It's easy to blame them. It's countries that actually take the responsibility, governments and member states. And I think also here we have some really interesting ideas that we can bolster around, and I'm sure in the sessions today and tomorrow there's more. How do we, as Retno Massoudi called upon this morning, start defining the post-2030 water agenda? And I think Pedro also mentioned how to bolster, how to anchor water in the UN beyond the 2026 and 2028 conference. Again, let's get together with a coalition and do it, make it happen. Nobody else is going to make it happen except us. I also think several people talked about how do we engage with other sectors, and for me the Bakia Water and Climate Dialogue that we've started, where there's a lot of member countries of UNFCCC actually trying to do this, is a good example of how we put water and adaptation on the UNFCCC agenda. Again, that exists. Let's not reinvent the wheel. Let's connect the dots and really get to action. So joining forces, bolstering multilateralism. And I think the third one is how do we create a water buzz? How do we create momentum at the national and local scale? And thanks to our panelists for reminding that a lot of work is at the local scale, at municipalities, at communities, at civil society, and they need to be heard in these global fora, but also supported by global actors, because that's what we're here for, not just a talk shop. I think there's good ideas, and there's also much you can do in the conference, no? If you meet somebody from another country, maybe you can visit and say, hey, I can help you to put water on the political agenda. How do we help the African Union with the Africa Year of Water to really make this happen? Because the decision of national governments, of mayors, of ministers of finance, ministers of agriculture, and ministers of water are going to really change and scale up. So with that, I think we're at the end of this opening segment. Let me first ask for a hand of applause for our youth representatives and my panelists. And I will say what time you need to be where, because we are going to start strictly on time to catch up some of the delays. So the roundtables in the afternoon will start at 2:15, 14 or 15. 14h15. I hope everybody has put that down. Water for People will be here in this auditorium, and Water for Prosperity will be in the Oval Room, the Salle Ovale on the first floor, premier floor. Good. With that, I hope you're all energized. Action, action, action. Scale, scale, scale. And let's use the period between now and the 4th of December in Abu Dhabi to really make sure we join forces for water security for everybody around the world. Thank you.